Pattaya to welcome back GIs in August as political group accuses the US of meddling in Thailand. Former People's Democratic Reform Committee activist Mr Phichit Chaimongkon accused the United States of being guilty of an abuse of human rights in Thailand. He also indicated that his group was seeking further information on US scholar and longtime Khon Kaen resident, David Streckfuss, who claimed last week that his visa and work permit was in jeopardy due to his political activities. This comes as Pattaya officials have revealed that the city's population will be 70% vaccinated by August and ready to welcome thousands of American GIs at Bali Hai pier for an R&R stay who will also have been fully vaccinated. There have been mixed signals in Thailand over the past few days, with Pattaya officials at City Hall, on Wednesday, extending the red carpet for American GIs to spend R&R time in the once thriving resort city famous for its adult entertainment, while, on the other hand, a protest group took up position outside the U.S. Embassy in Bangkok on Tuesday, accusing American officials there of supporting groups within the country seeking to undermine Thai traditional values, national security and to topple the monarchy. Captain Matt Barker, U.S. Naval attaché at the American Embassy in Bangkok, gave details to the media on Wednesday after U.S. officials met counterparts in Pattaya City Hall to discuss the use of the resort city for U.S. military personnel as a rest and relaxation base after the Cobra Gold exercises due to be held in August. This comes a day after a protest at the embassy when conservative activists accused the United States of meddling in Thailand's affairs after staging a protest outside the compound in Wireless Road in the center of the city. American GIs are heading back to Pattaya in August this year to help give the decimated resort city a boost after its vital tourism industry has been left flattened by 3 waves of COVID-19. Thailand is currently in the midst of the most serious outbreak to date, but authorities in Pattaya City who met American military officials on Wednesday have confirmed that by August, 70% of the population there will have been vaccinated. American official at City Hall in Pattaya confirms the American military is coming back to Pattaya. Details of the proposed visit came after Captain Matt Barker, Naval attaché at the U.S. Embassy, and Mr. Charles Butler of the U.S. Force Protection Detachment with officials of the city's administration discussed public health precautions and security of the visit, which will occur as part of Phase 3 of the Cobra Gold military exercise. The use of Pattaya by the U.S. military as a rest and relaxation resort is credited with triggering the boom in the city that occurred in the 1960s, turning it into one of Southeast Asia's most popular destinations, but also among the most notorious in the world because of its reputation for sex and sleaze. Cobra Gold is one of the biggest international military exercises in the world since it began in 1982. Cobra Gold has been happening regularly since 1982 between the Thai and U.S. militaries. It also features service personnel from other countries in the region such as Malaysia, Indonesia, Japan and Singapore who are members, as well as other countries, mainly the Asia-Pacific region, but also additional Western allies. The Cobra Gold exercises are among the largest in the world, and even though this year's event, in August, will be smaller than normal, focusing on field exercises, it is still anticipated that up to 30 countries may play a part between those who are members of the group as well observers and partners. Press told that between 1,000 to 2,000 U.S. personnel will be visiting Pattaya for R&R after Phase 3. The meeting, on Wednesday, between the U.S. representatives and Pattaya City Hall officials was followed by a press briefing at which it was revealed that between 1,000 and 2,000 U.S. service members would be coming to Pattaya for rest and recreation after Phase 3 of the exercises. The Thai officials underlined that security for the visit at Bali Hai pier will be tight, with 3 shifts being manned 24 hours daily by a range of security agencies. Captain Barker said that Pattaya was well known to the U.S. military for its holiday facilities, beautiful scenery and delightful range of cuisines. He also pointed out that all American military personnel will have been fully vaccinated with 2 vaccine doses. Contrast in attitudes towards the United States as protest group turns up outside the U.S. Embassy. The friendly U.S.-Thai rapport on display in Pattaya on Wednesday was in marked contrast to a protest which took place on Tuesday morning outside the U.S. Embassy by a group of concerned Thai citizens who urged the world superpower to stay out of the kingdom's internal affairs. The group staged a protest outside the entrance to the compound on Wireless Road in central Bangkok, the second such gathering in the last 6 months. Royalists claim the United States is seeking to destabilize Thailand using hybrid warfare tactics, and media. The group were led by Nitithorn Lamlua, a lawyer who, at one time, was involved in the leadership of the People's Democratic Reform Committee, PDRC, the group which led the street protests in 2013-2014 that ultimately led to the toppling of the government of Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra. 3 cabinet ministers get jailed for insurrection over PDRC protests in criminal court. Shocker. On the 24th of February last, many of the top leadership or those at the forefront of the PDRC protest campaign were jailed by the criminal court in Bangkok, including 3 cabinet ministers, among them former Education Minister, Nataful Teepsuwan, who was sentenced to 7 years and 4 months, and former Digital Economy and Society Minister Buddhipong Punakanta, who received a 7-year term for his part in the aggressive street protest movement led by another former minister in the previous government of Prime Minister Abhisit Vijayjiva, Suthapthog Suban, who was also jailed. Protest here. The United States is engaged in a campaign of political interference across the globe. On Tuesday, the former PDRC co-leader was joined outside the U.S. Embassy by Phichit Chaimongkon, who told the media that the United States was engaged in a policy of political interference in countries across the world for the last 2 decades. He linked his claim with efforts by successive U.S. administrations to promote and export democracy internationally. He explained that this interference took the form of economic pressure and sanctions, as well as efforts to control and manipulate public opinion. He warned that up to now, these efforts by the world's largest superpower have managed to initiate conflict in other countries, and suggested that the same could happen in Thailand. America, using its military, security agencies, NGOs and clandestine organizations to influence the political events and opinion in Thailand. Mr. Phichit also pointed to development organizations and NGOs which were active in Thailand, and suggested that the United States was funding these groups who were using their position within the country to influence the country's political agenda and the public on the ground. He also warned that the U.S. was deploying clandestine organizations in Thailand and using its military and security apparatus to influence the agenda of Thai agencies. Government announced reform plans for NGOs in February, including mandatory disclosure of funding and registration with the Ministry of the Interior. In February, the government announced legislation in the form of 2 draft bills to monitor and regulate non-government organizations, NGOs, in Thailand. The proposed laws require all NGOs active in Thailand to register with the Ministry of the Interior, but at the same time, allows them to apply to the Thai government for financial support for the activities. The contents of the bills were outlined by Deputy Government Spokeswoman Ratchada Nadirek. The provisions require the NGOs to produce annual audited accounts and to account for their sources of finance. It is also stipulated that their activities must be entirely within the scope of Thai law. This is not intended to limit their rights, but is aimed at ensuring that money they receive will be properly used and their activities will be conducted in accordance with the objectives of non-profit organizations, for true benefits, said Ms. Ratchada at the time. The laws suggest that those found in breach could face jail terms, although the exact penalties were not outlined. At least 100 NGOs active in Thailand. It is understood that there are at least 100 foreign NGOs active in Thailand. Many work in combating the prostitution and human trafficking trade, while others provide support services to the less well-off, disadvantaged and vulnerable. Many have an indirect goal of helping to improve the lives of Thai women in a country which, by the standards of Western feminists, is lacking in Western-style social progress and, according to its sharpest critics, is regressive. Conservatives in Thailand see traditional values as sacrosanct, with the monarchy at its heart. Many conservative Thais, on the other hand, see Thai traditional values as sacrosanct, and these are the monarchy, the country's Buddhist religion, and love of the nation itself. Thai government warns about fake news online. In 2018, the Thai representatives at the UN in Geneva defended the country's controversial and draconian Article 112 Lese Majeste provision on the basis of protecting the kingdom's monarchy, which was at the heart of its traditions and culture. Protester describes U.S. activities in Thailand as human rights abuses of comparable gravity to war crimes. On Tuesday, Mr. Phichit said that the activities of the United States in Thailand were tantamount to human rights abuses of the highest order, or even similar to war crimes. He accused the American administration of funding subversive groups whose aim is nothing less than the toppling of Thailand's revered monarchy. Conservative protest group questions the activities of Khon Kaen-based U.S. academic David Streckfuss. The activist referred to the controversy last weekend over the U.S. scholar David Streckfuss, the PhD graduate from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, who is an expert on Southeast Asian history and has published a seminal work Truth on Trial in Thailand, dealing extensively with Article 112 and the ongoing political struggle. Officials deny longtime resident American professor in Khon Kaen was targeted because of political activities. Mr. Phichit said his group was investigating the activities of the American who has been living in Thailand for over 30 years and has headed up the U.S. non-profit organization, Council on International Educational Exchange, which before the pandemic had organized exchange students with Khon Kaen University. The U.S. national is also reported to have founded a news website in Khon Kaen, the ASEAN Record, and organized a seminar in February which dealt with the ASEAN region's identity and decentralization. Claims the U.S. Embassy supported student protests and the movement sought to topple the monarchy. The conservative activist referred to a firm denial from the U.S. Embassy on Monday to claims that an internal staff figure with the signature H had been involved in a line social media chat with student protest leader Chonticha, something that drew the attention and ire of conservative social media users after it appeared online. Mr. Phichit accused the American embassy of being supportive of the now diminished student protest movement, which has controversially sought reform of Thailand's highest institution. On Tuesday, Mr. Phichit claimed that the movement behind the protests sought to undermine Thailand's national security and to bring down the monarchy, the key pillar of the nation. Screenshot image allegedly linking U.S. Embassy staff member with line chat to protest leader. The controversy over the screenshot of the purported conversation between H, thought to be Mr. Henry Rector, a former political officer at the embassy, and the protest leader, is still raging. Like other similar claims over the past 12 months, this was denied when addressed, on Monday, by U.S. Embassy spokeswoman Nicole Fox. She stated unequivocally that the United States does not provide any form of support or financial assistance to protest groups in Thailand.